Hi, in this video we will learn how to go from the basics we've learned to a real expertise in coding. So how to code quicker and how to code like a boss. So, so far we learned always the same thing, that in order to do things in coding we need to create boxes. These boxes specialize in containing types of objects, just one type of object for one box. And then we put objects in the box. This is what is on screen here. If we want to play with a screen in our app, like create a screen and then putting it on display, we create a box. We create a box that we call first screen, and before the box we write form, because that's a box specializing in receiving screens, and codename 1 calls them forms. So we write this first line, and then we put a screen in this box this way. So you should be familiar with that with the previous tutorials. But what is possible to do is to write these two lines here into one line, which means that in just one line you create the box and you immediately put a screen in it. So yeah, I think it's quite simple. In one line you have the name of the box before you write screen, and you don't forget the capital F here to say that it's a box for screens, and inside it you put, with the equal sign, you put a new screen. So yeah, that's one trick if you want to code and write code quicker. Another trick is this one. If you want to create a label, let's say that we'll create a label for the label that will be on screen, and it will be the text that says welcome to the app. So we would create a box called welcome message. It specializes in containing labels, and we put a new label inside it. When we write that, we just apply the trick we just learned. We create the box and we immediately put a new label in it. Let's say that, so we have put an object in the box. As you know from previous tutorials, we can now apply actions to the object inside the box. And we do that by writing a dot after the name of the box. When you write a dot after the name of the box, you see a menu of actions, and here I've chosen the action set text, which means that you can change the text of the label. And the text we want for this label is welcome to this app. So that's how you would create a label and put some text in it. But the trick is you can do that in just one line. So it saves you time and you write less code. And you can actually already decide the text of the label at the moment when you create it. When you create the label here and you put it in the box welcome message, actually, instead of having these empty brackets here, as we had here, inside the brackets you put the string, which will be the text of the object. So you can do either that or that. This line is just one line as compared to two lines here. And even if you don't use this trick, I wanted to show it to you, because when we will create our app, we're gonna use code that has this form, and you might be a bit surprised to read this, but now that you know what it means, that should be easier to understand. When you create a new object to put it in a box, sometimes, not always, you are allowed to put stuff in the parentheses, in the brackets, to save you time. Okay, other trick now. Let's imagine we want to add this label, this welcome message, to the screen we have just created. So we would do it like that. Usually we create a box for screens here, we put a new screen in it, then we create a new label, and we immediately set or decide the text for it when we create the new label, and we put it in this box. And then we would add the label to the screen. How do we do that? The screen objects, the forms, they have an action which is dedicated to adding stuff. Basically, when you take the box first screen and you add a dot, in the menu you have an action which is called add component. And this action needs a parameter which is a button or a label, anything that you can add on a screen. And here that's very convenient. We have just created a label that we can put here. When you do that, your label, your welcome message is added to the screen. So this is nice, but we can write it in a shorter way. We can just do, so the first line remains the same. We create our first screen, the box for our first screen, and we put a screen in it. But then, instead of creating the label and then adding the label to the screen, we can create the label, we can create the label, and we don't put it in a box because we immediately add the new label to the screen, right? So I'm not saying, I mean, that's a bit difficult to understand, but so I'm not saying you should be able to write that next week, but this is something that you will see when you read code in the documentation or online in the internet. You will sometimes see stuff like that, like an action, and then as the parameter of the action you see new label, and you're like, what? I thought that new label was just when you put stuff in a box. Yes, but that's a shortcut, basically. Here you don't even put the label inside the box, you just put it immediately in the action. So please try to familiarize yourself with that. One of the mistakes that we often do is that we get confused with the parentheses, because we open one parenthesis here and then we open a second parenthesis here, and so we have to close the two of them before we finish the line, and sometimes we just forget one bracket and the thing doesn't work. So you just have to be careful about that. So I think it's the last trick. I think so. Yeah, the last trick I would like to share with you today is one that you will see many times written. So maybe you won't use it yourself because you won't be very comfortable with it. But when you will read code, you will see that a lot. And thanks to this slide, you will understand. So let's imagine that you want to get the height, how tall is the label on your screen. So why would you like that? I'm not sure, but maybe you won't. Maybe you would like to resize a picture to exactly the size of your label, so that the picture has fits exactly the height of the label. That might be the case. If you want to do that, you need to have you need to know how tall is your label on screen. Let's imagine you want that. The way you would do it is you would start by getting the label from the screen, and you would put it in a box welcome message, let's say. So you would do that. You would create a box welcome message which contains labels, and inside it you would take the screen, the screen we created in the previous slide. You would take the screen, and the screen has a very convenient action which is called get component. This action gives as the result the component that you ask. So which component, let's say we have a screen with many labels and buttons. How do you know that you will get the component you want? Well, they all have a number. So what did I write? Yeah, the first component on top of the screen is number 0, and then the second component just below it or just on the right is component 1, 2, 3, and etc. So if we imagine that on our screen we just have one label, the welcome message, if we type first screen dot and the action is get component and we just write 0, it will get the first component on the screen, which is our label, and it's put in this box. So that's how you would get a label which is on your screen. And then we would write another line of code to get the height of this welcome message. And you would just do, so we create a box to put this height. We would create a box that specializes in receiving integers. Integers are round numbers. And inside this box we would put the height. And how do we get it? We take our welcome message, we write dot, and then in the menu there is a get height action, which gives as a result the height, the number which represents the height of the label. So the whole point of that was just to show you that we would do that in 2 lines. First, we get the label from the screen with this method from the screen. And then once we have the label, we apply an action on it, and this action returns the number which represents the height, and we put it in this box. That's how, you could write that. But many coders, many developers like to write that in just 1 line. And how do you do that? This way. So first you create the box where the height will be stored. That's because that's what you want as an end result. So you create this box here, and you say, I want to, this box should contain a round number. And how do you put the round number in it? Well, you just look at that. I don't know if you get it, but it's like a chain of actions. We start from the left and we say from the screen, the box where we have our screen, we get the label, which is the component 0 on the screen. And when we have this label, we apply a second action, which is getting the height of the label we just got from here. Right? So you read that from left to right. And here we got a number which gets stored in the box we created. So again, when you start, you read that, you're like, oh, that's complicated, I couldn't, write that myself. It's completely okay. The point of this slide is to tell you that you might read, when you read the documentation or some code, you will see strange lines where you see many points, like one here, and the reason is that it's because you read from left to right. You take this box, you apply an action on it. This action returns, it gives as a result something. So here it gives a label, and you apply an action on this label, and we stop here. But sometimes you can even apply another action on the result you got here. But here that's what we want. We want the height of the label, so we just put it in the box. And if you want to know how it's called chaining. We put the actions in a chain. So that's basically it. So we are done, and you are almost ready to code by yourself together in the next session. But I want to give you a couple of secret tricks to make you really comfortable about coding. So the first one, how do I know that a screen is, I told you in codename 1, the screens of the app, they are called forms. How do I know that? And how do I know how to send stuff in the internet? Which box should I create to send stuff from the app to the internet, or to create a button or all of that. Where do you get this knowledge from? No secret or no theory or whatever. You just read the online documentation. Anybody that creates tools for you to use, they also create a documentation. So something which is very easy to read and that explains to you what you should do. So that's how I learned how to use Codename One. I was just on their website, and there is a developer section where there is a manual that you can read online for free. And there is a very nice table of content so that you can immediately switch to the content that interests you. You know, I would like to put a picture on my app, so you immediately go there and you read the code that you should write, and you try to do it, and then it fails, so you try again with another example that you find somewhere. So it's kind of, you are not supposed to open NetBeans and start coding as if you would know, right? You have to read the documentation first, and very often I have the documentation open on one screen or one window, and I have NetBeans open in the next window, and I just read and write. That's very manual as a way to code. The second trick is that how do I learn? How do I progress? The trick is to start simple. Just start very simple with, you create a screen and you show it in your app. Just that. And you have to have the reward of having things that work, like putting a label on a screen or having a button that works. Just that, it will help you get the logic and being very happy with the results you get. And then the more features you want for your app, the more complex code you try to write. And here you will have issues, problems, bugs, but again, if you make small progress, you're going to be encouraged to Google for answers, ask for help, etc. So it's start simple and move slowly. And finally, I'd like to share with you a kind of a dirty secret of coding, that black magic is completely okay. So what I mean by that is that sometimes you are, reading the documentation, or you are Googling for some explanation, and you find some explanation, and you understand more or less what the code does. And so, but you don't understand everything. Like you see some strange curly braces, or you see some, some strange words like protected or final, or, I mean, you see stuff that were not covered in the tutorials we've just seen. It's completely okay in this case to copy paste this bit of code and put it in your app and try to make it work. The reason is that the basics of coding you should understand, the box and the objects in the box and the actions. But coding is a vast language, and we are not supposed to know everything. Nobody knows everything about coding, even the experts. So it's completely okay sometimes to just say, well, I understand that later. I'm just gonna copy this bit of code, put that into my app, click on run the application, and that's gonna work even if I don't understand all of it, just part of it. So to illustrate that, this is just a cartoon made by XKCD, the website, where you see that it illustrates that somebody is supposed to know everything about coding, and he doesn't know even one basic action. And that's a funny cartoon because it's completely true. Coders, even the experts, you can catch them actually doing a lot of copy pasting and Googling for, how should I put a label on my screen. So you can do it as well. So with all this knowledge, we'll move in the next session to creating an app with what you've just learned. Thank you.